it's that time again here on Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics, and continuing on with the Green Goblin story. And of course, Green Goblin, up to this point, this is the second part of a two-part story, had been more or less like the other villains. You know, he'd show up, he had his schemes and plots, would battle with Spider-Man over this and that. But all the while, his identity was kept secret and was teased along the way. And then the previous issue is revealed finally that he was indeed Norman Osborn, who turns out is the father of one of Peter's classmates. Harry Osborn and Peter would go on to become best friends for a time. But at this point, they really weren't. But that happens later. And, of course, Peter has a lot of sympathies for him, but never reveals as to why until later Harry figures it out for himself. And how Peter actually has some sympathies for Norman Osborn and tries to protect him from this. So we'll get into that as it goes. But it's an interesting back and forth in a lot of ways that made the Green Goblin probably the main villain of Spider-Man, even though wasn't always around. It's an interesting take on this. And as we go forward, we'll explore that. As opposed to Lex Luthor and the Joker and Doctor Doom and whatnot, although Doctor Doom would die and come back and stuff like that. But Green Goblin's a little different. There's plenty of other villains that are really up there. Dr. Octopus, I guess, would be like the second big villain for Spider-Man, so on and so forth. But it is this interesting thing of where there is this connection between the two that grows even after the battles. What's happening right now as I'm taping this in the comics, I just don't buy and think is stupid. It's odd how Norman Osborn has become a Lex Luthor clone, and even more odd in that they both follow the same templates and tropes plot-wise of becoming friends with their main enemy and all this stuff. It's strange how that works out. But anyway, back here, this is the real Green Goblin, and he's really off his rocker, or off his back glider, as it were. So Spidey saves the day. Yeah, he does, but oh boy, does he got some misery and pain on his way after these events. So, of course, the revelation to Peter of who the Green Goblin is after the Green Goblin has found out who he is and all this stuff. So here we go. If you missed our last ish because you were orbiting Earth on a spaceship, the only acceptable reason for all true Spider-Files copping out, all we need tell you is that Spidey has been captured and unmasked by the Green Goblin, only to learn that his ubiquitous enemy is none other than Norman Osborn, father of Peter's college classmate Harry Osborn. And now, Tiger, you're on your own. Take a good look at my face, Parker. A good long look. It's the last face you'll ever see in this life. I've got to stall for time and keep him talking while I strain against these steel alloy coils he's tied me with. I should have known it would be you, Osborn. Anyone who'd have a son like Harry. Harry? You know my son? You shouldn't have mentioned Harry. Why did you remind me of him? I mustn't think of him, do you hear? I must forget. He thinks I'm just a simple businessman. He must never know the truth. Never! And he won't! You'll never tell him. I'll let you. That's another reason why you must die, Parker. Only you know who the Green Goblin is, just as I know who Spider-Man really is. But what he doesn't know is I'm just as worried about Aunt May learning my secret identity as he is about Harry learning his. I've got to get out of this somehow, for her sake. The shock would be more than she could bear. I can tell that you're struggling to break those coils, Parker. How I enjoy watching your futile, tortured efforts. That's it, mister. Stand there and gloat while I keep tugging at these blasted bonds. But enough talk. Now I must find the most suitable manner of ending your interference forever. Spidey, if you ever thought fast and talked faster, you've got to do it now. I think the coils are loosening. All I need is time. Great work, Gobby. It'll make a real celebrity out of your son, Harry. Not every fella can have a murderer in the family. I warned you, don't mention him. Why not? What have I got to lose? You can only polish me off once. Osborn is obviously a psychopath. I've got to play on his emotions. Got to keep hitting him where it hurts. Anyway, you're not fooling me. You don't give a hoot about Harry. He told me so himself. He told me how you've changed towards him these past few years. Lies! All lies! He doesn't understand. Nobody understands. Nobody really knows why I became the Green Goblin. I was right. He's a real mental case. My only chance is to keep taunting him. But I've got to be careful. One wrong word could make him violent, and then bye-bye Spidey. Big deal. Who cares why you became the Green Goblin? You probably lost an election bet or something. What does it matter? You fool! I'll show you what it matters. I'll make you listen. Then you'll understand. Good. It's working. Well, so he tells the whole story. He goes back. I better skip ahead. No, but he's talking about I was a good father. I did my best to be a real pal to my son, but it wasn't easy and all that stuff. His mother had passed away when he was just a baby, and so, there's all kind of pressures here. And after all, I had a business to take care of. Money was the most important thing of all. I had to get rich. I needed wealth, for that was the key to power. And so, increasingly, he doesn't have enough time to be with his son. But you said you'd review my bio with me. I have an exam tomorrow. You'll just have to do the best you can. But hey, don't have anything to complain about. I bought him stuff. So, bought him a... There you go. Now be happy for already, Dave. I even took him to ball games.
Dad, do you think maybe we could talk for a while?
Sure, Harry, sure. But watch the game now. We don't want to miss any of this.
But we never get a chance.
Later, kid, later. He's sicker than I thought. He's living in a fantasy world of his own making. He's almost forgotten about me. But his story has me hooked now. I still can't figure out what made him become the Green Goblin. How could I expect Harry to understand how hard I had to work in order to achieve success? I had to be ruthless in business. I allowed no one to stand in my way. Not even my partner, a man named Professor Strom. Hey, remember Stony-Faced Strom from Spidey 37? Sure you do, yeah, he was the robot master. So anyway, Osborn, we're partners. You can't do this to me. I worked to build this business with you. Most of the inventions are mine. You can't turn against me like this. I only borrowed that money from our account. You know I didn't mean to steal it. If you call the police, I'll be ruined. It's too late for that, Strom. I've already sent for them.
But what?
Perhaps I was too hard on Strom, but it was his own fault for being careless, and it gave me complete control of my business. You'll pay for this, Osborn. I won't be in jail forever, and when I get out, I'll have my revenge. I swear it. You always were too emotional, Strom. That little outburst of yours doesn't impress me a bit. Take him away, gentlemen. I'll be in court to prefer charges in the morning. So that's why Strom tried to kill you with that robot of his. And that's why you resented Spider-Man's help. What a joke. Me trying to save the Green Goblin. Uh-oh. He's too quiet. I've got to get him talking again. I still don't get it, Osborn. You became wealthy, successful. You achieved your goal. So what made you turn to crime? What made you become the Green Goblin? I told you so much. I might as well tell you the rest. After all, my secret will die with you. Not if I can help it, mister. There. That's another finger I've managed to work loose. So, what happened? Did you win a green costume in a raffle or something? You're mocking me, are you? Well, that's all right. You may have your little joke. It's the last you'll ever enjoy. As for me, I still remember that fateful night when it happened. These notes of Strom's, which I found in his desk, contain some new strange-looking formulas. Since he's in prison now, I'll check them out. If they're worth anything, I'll be able to cash in on them. And then Harry came in, but I couldn't be bothered with him at a time like that.
Dad, have you forgotten? It's parents' night at my school this evening. We should be there by now.
Forget it, son. I can't make it now. You go on ahead. Maybe I'll get there before it's over.
But I thought...
I said forget it. It's a good thing I didn't go. Because if I had, I might never have become the Green Goblin. Instead, I stayed and worked through the night, hour after hour, until just before dawn. The solution is turning green. But why? What does it mean? It's beginning to bubble, to froth. And that sound, it's steaming. Whoops. So they work on him in the operating room, and they say, oh, there's some damage in the brain, but it's just, man, I've been up all day. Let's move on. It's like, no, they just couldn't reach it. It'd be too dangerous or whatever.
Poor Dad, it's all my fault. He must have been overworked, tired, trying to earn enough money to support me.
So anyway, so he wakes up. Harry goes to see him, and he goes, go downstairs and call a taxi. I'm getting out of here. And get that hangdog look off of your face. It bothers me. How did someone like me ever have a sniveling weakling of a son like you?
Dad, what's wrong? Why are you angry at me? What have I done?
You haven't done anything. That's the trouble. You're a spineless jellyfish like everyone else. Now be quiet. I've got to concentrate. Although nobody knew it, my accident had made me think clearer than ever before. Suddenly, a daring plan took shape in my mind. I'm stronger, smarter, tougher than anyone else. And I have all sorts of scientific devices in my chemical company that I can use. I can become the greatest costume criminal of all time. The idea became an obsession with me. It haunted me night and day. I knew I had to do it. And so many months later, the face is perfect. Now to design the rest of the costume. I'll make it my favorite color. Green. So there you go. He becomes the Green Goblin. And decides he'll get respect from the underworld if he defeats Spider-Man. So anyway, but now the time has come for the Green Goblin to achieve his greatest triumph. I've waited months for this supreme moment, for this victory which fate could never deny me. I can't give up now. I mustn't, for the sake of Aunt May, but the steel alloy is too strong. I still can't snap it.
How fitting it is that the face of the Green Goblin shall be the last sight you'll ever behold in this lifetime.
He was just a greedy, ruthless businessman before his accident, but the chemical changed him for the worse.
But I mustn't let the end be too easy for you.
Now what do I do? How do you reason with the madman?
First, you must sit there helplessly and wonder how I shall strike. And at the precise instant, you'll perish.
Well, he decides, hey, to prove he's the better guy, more powerful, whatever, he frees Peter Parker from the coils. and tells him to put his suit on because he wants to defeat him as Spider-Man, not some idiot college student or whatever. So the battle's on. He's, got ray guns, of course.
You've chosen the wrong adjective, Spider-Man. Washed up would be more to the point.
Perhaps my strength can't save me now, Gobby, but I've another ace in the hole. Don't tell me you've never heard of my swinging spider speed. It's so sublime, I'm surprised no one's written a sonnet about it. And he kicks him in the face. He falls in and gets fried by one of his machines, whatever. And Spider-Man's like, whoops, oh, I didn't mean to do it that bad. Well, stuff happens. What are you going to do? And then he wakes him up and he's thinking like, he's going to tell everybody who I am. What am I going to do? So, but then Norman wakes up and, you're not my boy. Where's Harry? Who are you? He doesn't recognize me. His memory's gone. Or is it? It's not hard to fake amnesia. The Goblin is capable of anything, and yet he couldn't fool my spider sense. It would tingle if I were still in any danger. But I don't feel a thing. He really doesn't know me. He doesn't even remember our fight. The sudden savage impact of his shock has actually affected his mind. This means there's still hope for me, and perhaps even for him. Why am I wearing this strange costume? Oh, no. This isn't going to be like that hotel room where, listen, buddy, I'll pay you whatever just to keep your mouth shut about that. Where am I? I must see my son. I have to help him with his bio. It's incredible. He thinks Harry is still in high school. His memory of the last few years is completely gone. He has no knowledge of being the Green Goblin. Hey, anyone in there? Fire department. So there you go. And this is the setup for a while. That Norman Osborn has amnesia. He doesn't remember being the Green Goblin. Then, of course, things spark his memory. He becomes the Green Goblin again. Gets his head hit. Goes back into amnesia. Well, that wasn't going to last long. So eventually they bring it to a conclusion in quite spectacular fashion that altered the course of Spider-Man forever. But we'll get to that when we get to it. But this was like the end of the first arc of Green Goblin, really. And you begin to realize he's not quite. I mean, all the villains to some, degree or another have a bit of psychosis going on. But in the case of the Green Goblin, it was quite severe. And that, Norman Osborn, yes, was a ruthless businessman. But until that chemical he stole from Strom blew up in his face, boy, karma, huh? He didn't have these crazy ideas about being a goblin riding around on a bat rocket and that sort of thing. But that's how it happened. And I guess the reason green was his favorite color was he was greedy, But anyway, one of the more milestones and classic moments in the story of Spider-Man. All right, before we go, I'll catch up with Moon Knight, which is the one issue I didn't get around to reading in time for last week's show. And somewhat connected in that the reveal of the identity of the mysterious new Moon Knight takes place in this issue. Oh, boy. It's a bit of a letdown. Now, there was only so many ways to go. Who's going to take Mark Spector's place? Obviously, Hunter Moon, I would have thought, would be the most obvious choice. But there again, it's this type of thing. He's already established as Hunter Moon. Why can't he continue as that? Why would he do it? I mean, I know he considers Moon Knight his brother and all this sort of stuff, and they're both fists of Khonshu. Yes, turns out, just like us, Khonshu has two fists. And that sort of thing. The other option, some mysterious thing, could it have been the Black Spectre had survived and took him over? Or that Mark Spector, the identity of Mark Spector no longer existed, but another one of his personalities took over, was more violent and brutal, that sort of thing. I thought could have been a possibility, but it's just not the case. The sad thing about it is, I guess this cool new outfit's not going to stick around much longer, but man, was it cool looking. So, I've grown accustomed to really liking the art from Moon Knight. It's had some interesting bits to it, and for a time was the only superhero title Marvel produces that's worth a damn. But it really drags on, and what the main problem here is not the lackluster reveal at the end. The main problem is, once again, it's a therapy session. Hunter Moon needs therapy like everybody else. And it's the same story over and over again. I'm guilt-ridden, I failed Mark, blah, blah, blah. The name of Moon Knight means something. It's important, and I'm mad at this imposter. All that type of stuff. And there's some cool scenes like this. Him and Tigra had decided to go and confront the imposter, and turns out he's hiding out at the building where Moon Knight died. And so they're like, oh man, well, look at this. So they go and they confront him. It's pretty lackluster. But what drags it down is his stupid therapy sessions, which they could have done in one issue after the death of Mark. I could understand that. He says, oh, you're dealing with the character's mourning and grieving of him. And elements of a story like that done well, which I don't think would have been, but it would have been one issue and done, and then you get back into the problems that this new Moon Knight is causing, and they're chasing after him. And you could have had a good cat and mouse story, Tigra, and then conclude it with the reveal of who he is, and more of a development as to who this is, because this is a character no one's seen or heard from in I don't know how long. I don't know if they're going to do anything more with that character. Maybe he'll adapt the costume for his new costume and reclaim his original name and stuff. I don't know, but not going to spoil who he is. And it is a man. That's surprising, isn't it? But anyway, that's about it. It's unfortunate. Getting close to probably dropping the title. I mean, one more therapy session. I guess the next one will be this character's. He'll have to go before the therapist to deal with his issue. But it's sad. But well, it could be worse. That's true. It could be. Maybe it'll bounce back, but I don't know. Anyway. That's it for this Wednesday. The only other thing to talk about, the announcement about DC. So let me get to that real quick. All right, there's been buzz aplenty about DC Comics developing their own Ultimate line of comics, similar to what Marvel has done a second time around. They're having some success with it, especially with the new Ultimate Spider-Man. So DC follows suit. So DC is reportedly eyeing a new universe, one that would be show-run by beloved writer Scott Snyder. I'm not that blown away or impressed by Scott Snyder as others. He's certainly better than most in the current crop of bad writing that happens in comics these days. But I mean, I kept hearing such high praise, and so, okay, so I'll check it out. And I was just like, well, not really. And then he was one of these big ones that made Batman a god and all this, and of course Grant Morrison did some of that himself, but I mean, it just, the whole universe revolves around Batman, and then the dark multiverse and Metal, which Metal had some fun in it, I'll give him that, but it was ultimately, it meant nothing, and it was just stupid. So I just didn't see what the big deal was, but I guess he's the best they got. So anyway, he's coming back to DC to oversee this new universe. It'll exist in parallel to the current DC universe, which, considering the shape it's in, if this one does well, will surpass it and replace it, probably. Existing in the same vein as Marvel's Ultimate Universe, the project will reportedly be called Absolute, or Absolute DC. And with the announcement of Absolute Power being the next big event, yes, another one, it stood to reason that Absolute would be the title of it. There's been a line of like they would put collected editions and like an omnibus or what have you of DC Comics, and those would be called the Absolute Edition, like it's everything. And Absolute is similar to Ultimate. So Ultimate was already taken, so they couldn't do that. The thing is, though, they've done this before. The New 52 was kind of like, but that was a massive reboot that they did, and it ultimately failed and had to do Rebirth and all that. But here they make mention Earth 1 and All-Star. So Earth 1 was a series of graphic novels they did. Some were pretty cool, some were just sort of okay. And that was an interesting thing. And no doubt they probably had hopes that would lead to something else, but it never really took off. All-Star, I would have thought they'd go back to that title, since it is the title of an old comic book anthology comic they had in the old days. And then, of course, All-Star Squadron and stuff like that. But they did those lines, but the only thing that came out of that was All-Star Superman, which was really good. And then there was All-Star Batman and Robin with Frank Miller. Had gorgeous art by Jim Lee, but the story just went nowhere, and then it just stopped and never got finished. And I think there was supposed to be an All-Star Wonder Woman with Adam Hughes, but it just never got off the ground. But anyway, it didn't work. But Absolute is the title they're going with, so it'll be Absolute Comics. And then there'll be an Absolute Superman and an Absolute Batman and so on. I'm guessing Scott Snyder will be doing Batman again. So Absolute Power, there'll be the one-shot Absolute Power and the event series that spins out of it from Mark Waid, who can do great work. He can, but man, what an a-hole. And Mikkel Janin, I guess. Yeah, I know that name. I've seen his work. Is it Michael or Bickle? I don't know. I mean, they spell it like that. But anyway, Ridiculous Cool speculates that Absolute and all-in initiatives will be or may be announced at Comic-Con International. It stands to reason it would. So there you go. Absolute Power event is likely to wrap in October or November, and then the next thing, maybe this won't take off until January. But there you go. They'll try that, hoping that the excitement will spur interest. But it's got to actually be good in it and the takeoff. There's rumors aplenty about what he's going to do with Batman, and that he won't be the son of millionaires and this sort of thing. Well, whatever. But we'll see how that plays out. But they almost had something, They almost did with Superman. Superman right now is probably their best title going. World's Finest has been the absolute best. But the Superman titles, it's got some stupid in it, but compared to everything else, it's pretty good. Runner-up would be Batman and Robin, and that's about it. Everything else looks like it's crap. Well, Green Lantern's not too bad, but it's kind of dragging. And I think that's about it, yeah. So anyway, there you go. Absolute DC Comics. On your way. Couldn't use Ultimate. Could have used Maximum. What about Maximum? That's another. Could have been Super Comics. Oh, but then, the title for Superman would be Super Superman. So I guess they'll just go with Absolute. Yeah. Will they call the Justice League the Absolutists? Anyway, there you go. See you next time.